Hi, I'm Dana. I'm a millennial from the San Francisco Bay Area, rediscovering the beauty and tradition of the Roman Catholic faith. Whether you've always called this faith your home or you're just now catching a glimpse of its beauty, I'm honored to share my journey with you. These are my Catholic memoirs. It's April 13th, the feast day of St. Hermenegild, martyr. Son of the king of the Visigoths in Spain, he was put to death by the Arians in 586 out of hatred for his faith in the consubstantiality of the Word of God with the Eternal Father. All the angels and saints, please pray for us. My husband is now a Catholic, and I really have no words because it's surreal now that I'm actually saying it out loud. It's just like all kind of settling in, especially now that I'm sharing with you how it all came to be. He finished OCIA and joined the church on Easter Vigil, and the next day was my birthday on Easter Day. So it was like, it's just like it's all kind of coming to me and hitting me how our family is complete now with the church, with being in communion with the church. So my husband is now a Catholic, and it has been a long journey. I will say that it's been over 15 years since we've been together, and I wanted to share like a brief overview of how it all happened, because I did mention his OCIA journey so far, but I wanted to kind of reflect on his whole journey, especially his presence in my life. So we met in 2010, we got married in 2019, and then he started OCIA last year and finished OCIA in 2026. So that is like the full overview of the timeline for him coming into the church. But along the way before that, I realized let me backtrack. When I asked him if there was anything he wanted to mention in the video, and he just told me, I feel the same. And I was like, I just had to laugh because it's such a typical response for him. My husband and I are both software engineers, but he's like the more logical, practical one between the both of us. So him to just like look at me dead in the face and say that, I was just like, of course. So I was thinking about like reflecting on his journey, and his journey with the faith didn't just start with OCIA. It goes a bit before that. I mean, when I think about our marriage and how long we've known each other, since 2010, I realized like he had actually walked a lot of my faith journey along the way with me, especially when I came back to the church. I never left the church. I just stopped going to mass. So I never went to explore other denominations or did anything like that. But when I was in college, I was just really busy with school and work, so I didn't go to church anymore since I was away from home. And when I started coming back to church in I think it was around like 2016, that was when my younger brother passed away. I had to plan his entire funeral. So my husband was there with me at the time we were dating, and he was there with me the whole time. So he saw me through all of my worst times, like all of the things and the struggles from college. And then he saw me through the tragedy of my younger brother's unexpected death. He was just always walking along with me with my return to the faith. So after my younger brother's funeral, I had started going back into the church. And so he actually saw my entire change from what I was from college into going back into the church, and seeing my my devotion to the church, which was, I would honestly say, is completely different from what I was before from college to now. So I'm actually very surprised that like looking back at it now, it's very it's kind of like a testimony to his being committed and resilient to our relationship and then later on our marriage together, because I was really going back into the church. I know a lot of people go back into the church because of some sort of tragedy or pulled in, and it kind of like their relationship with the church kind of like changes over time. It gets stronger, it gets weaker over time. But for me, it was like very strong. And then when he proposed to me, that's when we definitely started going headfirst into the church. I had discovered the Latin Mass. I was, I wanted to have I wanted to have a Catholic wedding, and he had to go along the ride with me. And pre-Cana for him was very difficult because he pretty much had to sacrifice his all that he knew about religion and faith, even though he wasn't baptized, and he had learned about his learning about Christianity was from the Baptist Christian private school that he went to from elementary to junior high. It was a lot for him to sacrifice and have to go through that. And there were some things that he felt like he actually was forced to, but he knew that if he wanted to marry me, that he loved me enough to, and that he loved me enough to sacrifice all of that for me, because he knew how important my faith was to in my life. So that was like the next biggest point. First was the funeral for my younger brother, and then the second was our marriage into the church. And then we had our children, and heard the journey of him being going to mass with me and everything. It was not easy. There were lots of very difficult times, mostly because we just had trouble with like the kids. It was hard to get everything together and just go to mass at an appropriate time. So had lots of struggles with that. But he he went unfailingly every week with me, because he knew that that was a promise that he made. And then the pandemic hit, so that we had a lot of delays with him starting OCIA because of pre-Cana, a non-Catholic has to promise to raise the children Catholic in order to get married in the church. He's a man who lives by his promises and doesn't ever want to break them. So he definitely stood by his promise and always went to mass with me and the kids without fail every week, unless we obviously got sick. So that was his continued walk in the faith with me. And I realized I was just like never really alone with the faith. Every time I got deeper and deeper into the faith, he was always there. So yeah, that's, I guess now that I'm realizing it, his coming into the church and finally becoming a Catholic is just so very emotional, I guess. But I knew the day would come eventually, so I'm just so proud of him, because it's just been such a long time, and there were a lot of setbacks and a lot of things that got in the way. Timing just didn't work out, but he always stood strong. He always kept his promises, and for the most part, I don't think he's not one to complain. So he's just that strong of a person. So I just feel really blessed to have someone like him in my life. So I guess that kind of loops back into when I asked him, like, does it feel any different, or how do you feel now? And he said, no, it doesn't feel any different, because he's been going to mass with the family ever since. And I think this ties into something that was interesting happened during OCIA, because one of the other catechumens he went to mass with, or like took OCIA classes with, it was extremely devout, like extreme, like head over heels, like fallen in love with Catholicism, and was, I think we think he's actually probably just going to become a priest. So, but he never had any religion before learning about Catholicism. So it's all completely new. It's kind of like a honeymoon phase. And I think the one good thing that I noticed with my husband is that he's very steady and constant and resilient, and for him to say that it doesn't feel any different, but I know that I trust that he'll continue to make do on his promise and continue to lead my family now into the faith. It just shows that even if he doesn't have like those really kind of like the honeymoon phase of learning about a new religion, I can trust that regardless of his feelings toward whether he's like on fire or not, he will continue to make do with his promises. So I think that is very important. I guess I could mention the Easter Vigil. Easter Vigil, April 4th. My husband had a retreat that he went to the seminary with my spiritual director, who is a monk priest. He had attended the seminary, and then the other catechumens, which was two other guys. So he was taking videos of where they pretty much got a private tour of the seminary, and it was beautiful. I'm so jealous because my spiritual director, I think he teaches at the seminary every now and then. So my husband was like laughing. He took our head monk's spot. He has a parking spot at the seminary. He's like, and so my spiritual director, who's like a year older than me, he's the newest monk in the order, but he was like, I'm gonna go take his spot. So he took the head monk's spot. Obviously, because the head monk wasn't gonna be there. He was busy preparing for Easter Vigil, but it was just really funny that he did that. So the seminary is so beautiful. I've only seen it in pictures. I always wanted to like go see a Gregorian chant mass there. The Archbishop Cordileone, celebrates mass there. Several solemn masses there every now and then. So I was like, I was just like, oh, this is like a dream place for me to go to. So in between my husband's retreat during the morning, which was going from like 8 a.m. until 2 p.m., my kids and I, we wanted to get gifts for my husband. And what we ended up doing was we went to the church store in near the church, and I let my oldest son pick out a gift for him. Let me see if I can get it without spilling the holy water, because there's holy water inside of here. And my oldest son ended up picking a holy water font. It's really small. Like, look how small this is. Perfect size for the kids. And it doesn't hold a lot of water, so we don't have to worry about too much water flying around. But it's like the first holy water font I've ever owned in my life. So I'm pretty excited about it, and my kids really love it too. And yeah, yesterday I was just laying down next on the sofa, and the holy water font is right there at the front door next to the sofa. My youngest son was playing with the holy water font, and I was laying down on the sofa next to him. And so when he was getting some of the water, he would put it on my forehead and say, "Here you go, mommy." So I thought it was so cute. So I'm pretty happy with the holy water font. My husband was like, why did they get something that they could play with? But obviously, kids are gonna be kids. But I'm pretty happy that we have this now in our house. And when we were trying to get it blessed, we ran into one of the priests. He does a Novus Ordo, and he was just so sweet and kind. And he just even remembered later on in the day that he blessed the holy water font for us. But my oldest son had this idea that he wanted to get holy water, but because it was Easter Vigil, there was no holy water in the church at all. They said that the holy water wasn't available until after the Easter Vigil, which made sense. So my oldest son, he surprised us later on that he was determined to get holy water. I ended up taking the two boys to the Vigil Mass, and the Vigil Mass was from like 8 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. It was really late. Surprisingly, my oldest son ended up staying awake, and he got his holy water. I really wasn't expecting to go to the Easter Vigil. I was just expecting to stay home and put the kids to bed and probably mope around and be sad about it. But we were there. I had to cart the kids around in a wagon because they couldn't keep quiet during the vigil, because they were just so excited. Every time they're at church, they're just so excited. They can't keep quiet. So I mainly was pushing them around in their wagon, and luckily the mass was being live streamed, so I was able to watch it on YouTube and show it to the kids while they were sitting in the wagon. So I didn't feel like I was missing out too much because I was able to follow along. And there are many times that I would ask the priest, I was like, oh, a lot of times I can't really bring the kids into mass because they're so excited. They don't want to sit still or be quiet. And that's just how my kids are. So it's nice that the priests always kind of validate that as long as you're on church grounds, you are all receiving the blessings. So so that always helped with the motherhood expectation, the motherhood shame of not being at mass. So there's that. But yeah, it was beautiful. I can't believe I got to see my husband get baptized and get his confirmation. It was wonderful. And I just remember after the vigil, they opened up the doors of the back of the church to the multi-purpose center, and there they were having like a small feast or a small banquet there for everyone who attended. And a group of ladies came up to my husband and they were like, can you give us a blessing, because you've just been baptized, you're on fire, and we can actually get a blessing from you. And I never heard of that before, but this is also my first visual mass and also seeing other people get baptized. So I thought that was really, it was so adorable to see those ladies just like come to my husband and ask for a blessing. So it was just so heartwarming. It was a really beautiful experience. And I think now that we are fully a Catholic family, I I thought of kind of reflecting a bit about it. Like, I know there are I know there are thoughts on against marrying someone who's not Catholic. If I look back on it, I think in the end, the recommendations for not marrying someone who's outside of the faith is is sound. It makes sense. It is going to be very difficult, obviously, to try to marry someone in the church, and them not being part of the church does make it difficult because of the differences, the inconsistencies. And then I think it also makes it difficult, especially if you're a woman, because say like the children, especially since my kids are both boys, they follow what the dad does, and the dad has such a great influence on the family. So fortunately, my husband was always very serious and responsible with how he treats religion. So he always kept his promises, and I'm already seeing the fruits of my children because they always observe my husband. And I think they're just gonna have a very positive and good experience with the faith, thanks to my husband being such a good leader in the family. So as far as interfaith marriage, I would just say that at least for the case of my husband and me, we got lucky. We were very fortunate. The things that helped a lot is both his and my personalities. We work well together. We have a lot of understanding, but also is very challenging for both of us because of the sacrifices that go into it. You definitely like sacrifice a lot of yourself in order to make the marriage work. And then also, I just remember when my children got baptized, the head monk said, I think it was during a spiritual direction moment, a meeting, and he said, "Praise be to God. It seems like prudence was a great gift to your family." And I thought about it, and I thought it was absolutely true. I think in order for an interfaith marriage to be successful, there needs to be a lot of prudence, not just on the Catholic, it's on both sides. Personally, I'm actually not very prudent. I'm very much of a fighter, so I will bring up my points and fight for my opinions. But in this case, when after getting married, I realized I needed to let my husband take the time that he needed. I needed to step back and let him go at his pace. I think a danger would have been to just try to force him and tell him, "Oh, we need to do this with the faith, and we need to get everything done right away." And yes, I mean we because he had Baptist Christian foundation of his Christian knowledge, I did struggle a lot with getting the children baptized. One, because of the pandemic, making it difficult, but also the difference in his theological understanding, because Baptist Christians don't believe in infant baptisms. They believe that a person should baptize himself. So unfortunately, my children didn't get baptized until they were like 2 and 4 or 2 and 5 years old. But when I had that meeting with my spiritual director, he was just so happy that my children were finally baptized. And he just said that prudence truly was the greatest gift that our family needed to be able to come into fullness with the church. So it was absolutely prudence. It was a lot of me stepping back and holding back my self-centeredness, my ego, and really just stepping back and letting him take the lead in the family and going at his pace. So I would say my thoughts on interfaith marriage in the church: definitely proceed with caution. I think my husband and I were just really lucky, but I don't know if that's the case for a lot of other people. So that is just my reflection on that. And what's next for our family? Our next goal is going to be getting our children their sacraments. So our next step is catechizing our children in the faith, formally catechizing them, not just what we teach them at home, but starting up with a catechism program. And we will be going with our church's program, which is Family Faith Formation. And what they do is they meet twice a month. And they usually celebrate, it usually happens with a meeting after a Novus Ordo Mass. So that means that our children will have 2 weeks of exposure to the Novus Ordo Mass, which is fine. And then in between the other times, we will go to the Latin Mass. And then what happens after the Novus Ordo Masses, which are met twice a month, we break into groups with appropriate age groups. So the children will go with a children's group. There will be older children's group, like for the ones that are receiving their sacraments. And then parents will have their own group to learn about how to catechize their children. And after that meeting, every family goes home with packets that are tailored to the age groups within their family. And it's the responsibility of the parents to continue living out and teaching the faith to the children. So it's kind of nice, as opposed to the CCD program that I went to growing up. And my parents would just drop me off. I would sit in a class and listen to a person talk about the faith for like an hour or so. And that was it. And I honestly did not remember anything from it because I was a distracted child. But yeah, I think this is going to be nice for my husband and I to have that responsibility of teaching the faith and continuing teaching the faith to the children. And it feels kind of more like a homeschool program, but it's definitely more involvement for the family, especially the parents. So this is much different from my 90s upbringing with CCD program and receiving my sacraments in the church, because honestly, the only way that I really learned about the faith and saw my parents with their model through it was just them bringing us to Mass on Sundays and just giving us the basic prayers. So it looks like, at least for the Family Faith Formation in our church, they even teach us about Embertide, they liturgical living, they celebrate saints' feast days and different devotions, and will also invite us to a lot of the traditions that our church will also be celebrating, which through my upbringing, when I was taking CCD, I didn't learn any of that. So I'm excited. That is what we will be doing next. Please pray for us. I'd love to hear about if any of you have experienced a baptism or an Easter Vigil, like going through OCIA or previously RCIA, and how that experience was for you. And I hope you had a wonderful Easter. And I'll see you again soon. God bless you. Take care.